On March 31st, 2025, France woke up to chaos. Marine Le Pen, the leader of France's far-right party, National Rally, was found guilty of embezzling millions of euros in public funds and banned from politics. It's a major political earthquake in France, as this means Le Pen is officially out of the presidential election race in 2027. So, what happened exactly? Between 2004 and 2016, Marine Le Pen and other party members were accused of misusing 4.4 million euros in funds from the European Union. These funds were meant to pay for assistants working for members of the European Parliament. But the investigation found that many of these assistants weren't doing EU parliamentary work per se. Instead, some of them, including Le Pen's sister, father, bodyguard, and close political allies, were working for the party in France, helping with political strategy and campaigning. But that's illegal under EU rules. Public money from Brussels isn't supposed to fund domestic political activities. The punishment? 4 years in prison, 2 under house arrest, a €100,000 fine, and a 5-year ban from politics. This part is key. Marine Le Pen will not be allowed to run in the 2027 French presidential election, a race many expected her to win. The National Rally also has to pay back over €4 million, which could seriously damage the party. Le Pen and her party are furious about the decision. She's calling it a political witch hunt, saying the French establishment and the courts are trying to silence her views, and campaign have threatened the status quo in Paris and the rule makers in Brussels. She's even compared herself to Alexei Navalny, the Russian opposition leader, and Martin Luther King Jr., saying she's being punished not for crimes, but for political beliefs. Her supporters and some far-right figures internationally, like Viktor Orban and Donald Trump, have echoed those sentiments.
That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. I know all about it, and a lot of people thought she wasn't going to be convicted of anything, and I don't know if it means conviction, but she was banned for running for 5 years, and she's the leading candidate. That sounds like this country. That sounds very much like this country.
One thing's for certain, the leftists that are in control of the EU will not give their power away in fair elections. So, was it really that bad? Let's break down some of the arguments being made by her defenders. The court says this was clear corruption, stealing taxpayer money.
The money in your account, it didn't do too well, it's gone.
What do you mean? I have $100.
Not anymore, you don't. Poof.
But Le Pen and her supporters argue differently. The work was being done, just not in Brussels. At the heart of the case is the claim that European Parliament funds were used to pay people who weren't doing official EU work. But let's be honest. Embezzlement sounds like cash-stuffed suitcases and lavish parties. But in this case, it's about how salaries were allocated. That's a big difference. No one's accusing Le Pen of stealing money for personal luxuries, private jets, or offshore accounts. She used the money to further develop her political party and campaign. But here's the thing. This is not the first case of such mishandling of money. Many politicians in France have done this before across the political spectrum, from far right to far left to mainstream parties. Supporters argue that she's being punished more harshly than others, possibly because of her political threat. Le Pen wasn't just running for president against Macron. She was challenging the entire EU system ruled by unelected bureaucrats. Let's not forget Qatargate, where in the same EU Parliament only 2 years ago, Belgian police found members of the EU Parliament, including its head girl Eva Kaili, of taking bribes of up to €1.5 million in cash. Very quickly after their arrest, these people were let go with only a slap on the wrist. These people were fueling their own pockets and were met with no punishment. But that's not all. Earlier this year in March, police found 21 members of the EU Parliament involved in more corruption scandals to do with the Chinese tech company Huawei. As you can see, the EU Parliament is guilty of much, but it seems like Le Pen must pay the price. More and so, this investigation took a staggering 10 years. That's very unusually good timing, especially since Le Pen's popularity was at an all-time high. Just before the verdict, polls showed Marine Le Pen could have beaten President Emmanuel Macron if elections were held today. She had massive youth support, especially among voters 25 to 35. To her supporters, this feels like political elimination, not unlike what's seen in more authoritarian countries. But what could make the EU hate Marine Le Pen so much? And why do so many French people support her? The answer lies in the simple fact that France is in trouble, and Le Pen is offering radical solutions where others stay silent. France is facing serious challenges with both legal and illegal immigration, especially from North African and Muslim-majority countries. Many people believe the situation is being handled poorly by the government. The sheer number of incoming migrants is putting heavy pressure on the economy. It's driving up the cost of living, making housing more expensive, and overloading public services like healthcare and social support systems. This means there is a fast-growing cultural unease, especially in areas with large immigrant populations. This is exactly the kind of crisis Marine Le Pen has been warning about for years, and why her message is hitting harder than ever now. That sense of crisis is especially strong in parts of the country with large immigrant populations. Le Pen often points to these areas, the banlieues or urban ghettos, as examples of what happens when integration fails. These neighborhoods are overcrowded, poor, and increasingly violent. In fact, France has over 1,500 of these so-called no-go zones, where youth unemployment is high, gang activity is growing, and police are often afraid to enter. In some of these areas, French is no longer the main language spoken. Conservative religious values, especially Islamic ones, are taking hold. And in some cases, informal religious rules are being enforced in place of French law. A lot of the residents are second or third generation immigrants, which has led to growing debates about whether integration in France is failing.
As if airbrushed out, there are no women. In some of the outskirts of Paris, men have taken over public spaces, and women are putting up with it. Nadia Ramadna and Aziza Saya are two activists from the Mothers Brigade. They are fighting for women's rights in their Paris suburb. To demonstrate the kind of reaction they get from men, they visit a local cafe with a hidden camera. Before they even get inside, their presence seems to disturb the other clients.
Cherchez qui, madame? On cherche quelqu'un. Un monsieur? Oui.
There are only men in here, and they're not very welcoming.
Le mieux, c'est d'attendre dehors.
Pourquoi?
Ici, il y a que des hommes.
Bah, c'est pas grave, on vit dans un monde où il y a des hommes et des femmes. Ça vous dérange, vous?
Moi, c'est pour vous.
Non, pour moi, là, je suis...
Voilà, dans ce café, il n'y a pas de mixité.
Est-ce que c'est normal?
On est à Sevran, on n'est pas à Paris.
Même à Sevran, c'est la France.
T'es dans le 93.
Et alors, le 80... Et alors?
À Paris, c'est des mentalités différentes. C'est comme au bled.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps a growing channel like mine. Got more great content coming your way, so stay tuned. It feels like a separate society is developing inside the country, one that doesn't share the same values or rules. This brings us to what Marine Le Pen calls the biggest threat facing France today, the Islamization of French society. France has the largest Muslim population in Western Europe, nearly 15% of the total. But even more alarming to many is the fact that over 60% of the prison population in France is Muslim. This has led to growing concerns that radical Islam is spreading, and Le Pen has made that a core issue in her campaign. And if any country has felt the impact of Islamist extremism, it's France. In 2015, the staff of Charlie Hebdo magazine were murdered in cold blood for publishing satirical cartoons of the Prophet Muhammad. In 2020, a school teacher was beheaded on the street simply for showing those cartoons in a class about free speech. These attacks deeply traumatized the French public. They didn't just spark outrage, they ignited nationwide debates about immigration, Islam, free speech, and national security. And for Le Pen, these events prove her point. France is under attack from within. She openly says, France is at war with radical Islam. And she blames open border immigration policies for making the problem worse. Many of her supporters agree and believe that France is losing its identity. Le Pen has promised bold solutions: drastically reduce immigration, tighten border security, ban Islamic symbols like the hijab in public, and de-Islamize public spaces. She also wants to end birthright citizenship and give French citizens priority when it comes to jobs, housing, and government benefits. And the public is listening. Polls show that 60% of French people say Islam is incompatible with French values, and over 70% support tighter immigration laws. Le Pen's ideas are no longer fringe, they're mainstream, and that terrifies the EU. Her message is summed up in one powerful line: I am not against Islam. I am against Islamism, against separatism, and against those who refuse to become French. That line hits home with millions of voters who feel unheard by traditional politicians. But it also puts her in direct conflict with the European Union, whose core values include open borders, multiculturalism, and religious tolerance. If Le Pen had come to power, her policies would have challenged the Schengen Agreement, EU human rights laws, and the very foundations of European unity. Le Pen also wants France to seriously cut, or even stop, its payments to the EU. She argues that French taxpayers are sending billions to countries that, in her words, don't respect French interests. And for many in France, that message hits hard. When they look around, they see rising prices, crumbling hospitals, growing insecurity, and a country they feel is falling apart. So the question becomes, why keep pouring money into other countries when your own feels like it's in crisis? But this poses a major threat to the EU. France is one of the biggest contributors to the EU budget. If France pulls back, the entire EU would feel the shock. Most importantly, Le Pen's party wanted the return of national sovereignty over EU law, meaning France's own laws take precedence over EU. They decide about their own fate. Her tone remains deeply critical of Brussels, referring to it as undemocratic, elitist, and out of touch with ordinary Europeans. To quote Le Pen, France must control its own destiny. The EU are terrified that if France does it, more countries will follow, destabilizing the EU bloc. But what about everyday life of the French? Well, it's taken a horrendous turn like most of the EU countries. Inflation and energy prices have crushed working families. Between 2021 and 2023, energy bills rose by over 70% for many households. Grocery prices, especially for meat, dairy, and oil, rose by double digits. And over 1 million French households had difficulty heating their homes properly in winter. Youth unemployment is especially alarming. 1 in 5 young people in France can't find a job, and in poorer areas, that number goes above 30%. A lot of these young people, especially outside big cities like Paris, are turning to anti-establishment parties. That's why Marine Le Pen's party has gained so much support among young voters in rural and small-town France. And then there's the tax burden. France has one of the highest in the developed world. Working-class people feel like they're paying more and getting less in return, while public services like healthcare, transport, and education keep getting worse. Many voters now see Macron's government as elitist, disconnected, and completely out of touch with regular people. To make things worse, EU climate and farming policies, pushed heavily by Brussels, are hitting small farmers hard. Rural communities feel abandoned. This part of the country, sometimes called peripheral France, sees decisions made in Paris and Brussels that don't reflect their reality. Le Pen's message to them is simple. She promises to reinvest in forgotten France, give power back to the local level, and protect farmers and small towns. But to do that, she wants to push back against EU rules, especially on climate and agriculture, which puts her in direct conflict with Brussels. So when you look at the polls, it's no surprise, a lot of French people feel like Le Pen speaks for them, and that makes her one of the biggest threats to the EU's global agenda. What's next for Marine Le Pen in France? Le Pen is appealing the conviction and might regain her political rights, but time is short before the 2027 election. Winning the appeal could turn her into a powerful symbol of resistance. However, this is a huge blow to the national rally. Le Pen has been its public face for over a decade and led it to its best ever results in recent elections. Now, the party needs to quickly find a new presidential candidate. If she loses, Jordan Bardella, a 29-year-old president of the National Rally, will likely step forward. He is a strong, charismatic character that appeals to many young voters, however inexperienced in national elections, and critics say he lacks Le Pen's toughness. Meanwhile, France's politics will remain deeply divided and unstable. Is democracy at stake? This conviction raises big questions. Should courts decide who leads, or should voters? Is the EU protecting democracy or using justice to remove political threats? Final thoughts. This case is bigger than Marine Le Pen. It's about trust in democracy and institutions in Europe. What do you think? Was this fair justice or political sabotage? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below.